In this video, we're going to talk about possessive pronouns. By the end of this video, my goal is for you to be able to define possessive pronouns, to identify possessive pronouns in a sentence, to correctly use possessive pronouns in a sentence, and to recognize words that are commonly confused as possessive pronouns. The first thing I'd like to do is talk about the definition of a possessive pronoun. A possessive pronoun is a word that shows ownership. Notice how we have this word possessive in our definition or even in our title. Notice how possessive, to possess something, means to own something. This is the really important part right here. With a possessive pronoun, we never use an apostrophe. So if you see a word that has an apostrophe, either one, it's a possessive noun, or two, it's a contraction. So what I mean by possessive noun is, let's pretend I have a proper noun here, and then I have a common noun. If I want to show that I own that truck, since this is a noun, I add an apostrophe to it. Mr. Hall's truck. If I want to use a pronoun to replace that, notice how I just replaced Mr. Hall with his. And notice how his does not have an apostrophe. The reason we don't use an apostrophe for possessive nouns is because a possessive noun has their own words. So all these words here are examples of possessive nouns. So when I want to use a possessive pronoun, all I need to do is pick one of these words, and I don't need an apostrophe to show that they own something, because that is their own special word that automatically shows that they own something. So we've covered a couple of our objectives. We've covered the definition, which is right here. We've talked about being able to list examples. That's right here. The next thing I'd like to talk about is words that are commonly confused as possessive pronouns but are not. The first word I'd like to talk about is your. So notice how this your, that's possessive. That's a possessive pronoun. However, this your is not possessive. This your means you are. So this is not a possessive noun. This is a contraction. Notice how it has this apostrophe, which shows that it's breaking our rule, and that's why it's not a possessive pronoun. Another commonly confused possessive pronoun is there. Okay, now notice how this there has an I in it. And the way I remember this is I own it. I'm part of this there. I own something. That's possessive. This there is not possessive. This there is in place. So that's not possessive. Then there's the other type of there. This means they are. This is a contraction. It's not a pronoun. Notice how it has our apostrophe, which breaks the rule. Last word I want to talk about is its. Notice how this its, you can scroll up a little bit to find it. Notice how this its, that is possessive, that owns something. But this its means it is, again, it breaks our rule. It has our apostrophe. That is not possessive. So with that in mind, let's take a look at our worksheet, and we're going to see if we can identify what types of possessive nouns we can use to correctly complete sentences. So this kind of takes us to our middle objective. So if we take a look at our first sentence here, it says, who is the book's author? Now, when we replace nouns with pronouns, often we have to reword sentences. So I'm looking at books. This is the noun I'm looking at, and I'm trying to figure out what pronoun can I use to replace books. And when I look through these words, its author, his author, her author, its author. Notice how I think it's is going to be a, appropriate pronoun to use. So then it becomes a choice between this its, that its. Notice how this one has an apostrophe. It rules that out, and it's this its. Notice if we were to rewrite the sentence, we would have to reword it a little bit. We'd have to say who is its author. So we'd end up getting rid of the. to make it make sense. Let's take a look at number 2. It says, that is Sue's book. And again, I'm just I'm focusing at this word, and I'm going to use each pronoun and see if it makes sense. So that is she book. No, that doesn't make sense. That is her book. Yes, that makes sense. Okay, that's its book. Well, that makes sense, but notice we can't replace Sue with it because there's a gender there. So this kind of goes back to the gender agreement lesson. That's my book again. We're not really talking about mine. We're talking about it's someone else's, so that's why that would work. Ron put Ron's bag over there, so I'm focusing on that. And I'm going to go through my pronouns. Ron put his bag over there. Well, that looks like it could work. Ron put her bag over there. This would not be gender appropriate. Ron put he bag over there. That doesn't work. Ron put your bag over there. That switches persons. It switches from third to second persons. That doesn't work either. That takes us back to a couple lessons ago. So it has to be his. So when you're working on the worksheet, on this worksheet, make sure that you try each word and make certain that it works. Also, make sure that you are not choosing words with an apostrophe because that is not a possessive pronoun. That is a contraction.